Oh yeah, I do. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Kirsten. So loss aversion is the next one. This is the one, this is an interesting one because this one comes into play in debt. It also comes into play with investing. It's this fear of losing money or cash flow. So I will get this question many, many times from clients that come into Savvy Ladies is they might actually have money sitting in a savings account and they have debt. And I will say, well, why aren't you taking some of that money and paying down this debt? And they're like, but I need that money to live. And it's like, I understand, but this debt is like 25% interest, and you're not making almost nothing on this money sitting in a checking account. So it's this idea that, like, oh, if I spend that to take care of something that makes sense from a financial perspective, I've lost it, right? I've lost access to that cash flow. Um, so paying down debt sometimes, even when you have the means, can be really hard. And then another thing is this debt tolerance is another part of loss aversion, where you just become very tolerant of it. And you don't see these large balances as big of a problem because you've been able to kind of get by and make it work, right? So another one, default and automation effects. This happens when people stay with default options, like something like, even if it's not their best interest, like auto enrolling in a high interest credit card. That credit card, like we used to get those at home all the time, right? Maybe some folks still do, where you get those credit card offers and you're like, well, I might as well, like open up some more line of credit for myself, right? And it can kind of work against you so that you're not then making extra payments towards paying down your debt, right? And last one is mental accounting. So people have this tendency to structure their money into buckets, and they treat borrowed money different from earned money. And what I mean by that is you get a tax refund, right? And this happens all the time. Instead of most people don't tend to think of the tax refund as something they should just use to pay down debt. They use it for something special, right? Because they think of the tax return as special. When in reality, the reason you're getting a tax refund is because you over contributed your paycheck to the government. You basically gave them an interest-free loan for every month, and then the reckoning comes, and at the end of the year they give you back a whole bunch of your money, but really it's just your paycheck. It's your paycheck coming back to you. It's not special money. It's not like a special treat that was supposed to be spent on a vacation or a new car, or I don't know, but it's meant to be spent for your living expenses because it's part of your paycheck. So anyway, so I'm going to put a pin in this because I wanted to tee these things up so that folks can really see, because I do get this question a lot. What is wrong with me? Why can't I just save this money and pay down this debt? I just can't make it happen. Every month I try to, I mean to, and it just doesn't happen. And we talk about these mental barriers, these mental behavioral effects that happen that can sometimes it almost can seem outside of your control to be able to do it. And I'm going to come back to these at the end, and I'm going to tell you some strategies you can do to kind of get around them. Okay. So one of the things I really wanted to talk about with debt, and that's why when I was talking with the folks at the library about whether we could combine debt and credit together as one topic. And I said, gosh, there's so much to talk about in each, debt and credit. So we separated them. This is really important, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, because I think a lot of folks tend not to really know what their rights are. And so I want to talk about this specifically, and then we'll talk a little bit about some other rights that you have. So this is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act was passed by Jimmy Carter, timely, in 1977. And so it's been around for a while, and the legislation was meant to stop a lot of these really bad practices that had started to really crop up in the 70s. As people started to use more credit cards became more prevalent. And then I'm sure you can imagine all these kind of spam and bad actors and people came out of the woodwork to try and really prey on folks. And so they needed to pass some legislation to make it so there were some protections for people. So limits on contact, they are not actually, if you owe money to a lender, they're not supposed to be calling you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. without your permission. So you somehow give them permission, and you always got to watch for these tricks, right? Where you check a button you didn't mean to, or you didn't read the fine print. But that's one of the parts of this legislation. They cannot contact you at work if your employer prohibits it. You can request in writing that they stop contacting you, meaning phone calls and things. You can say, look, you can write me, but I don't want phone calls, and they have to stop. Now, the trick is finding them, right? So some of these, I know I had to take my phone and switch it over to, like, if I don't know the number, it won't come through my phone, or else my phone was ringing all day long. So, they sometimes you can't find these folks to tell them, stop calling me, right? So anyway, that's one. Harassment and abuse is prohibited. They are not allowed to threaten you. They can't threaten violence. They can't use obscene language. If these things are happening, there are some things you can do, which we're going to get to in just a sec. They can't harass you with repeated calls or publish lists of consumers with debt. So they are not permitted to make a list of you and others that owe money and then publish that to people. They cannot provide false or misleading claims. They can't lie about the amount of money that you owe. They cannot pretend to be law enforcement or an attorney. And they cannot, sorry, can't see that's behind my thing there, falsely threaten arrest or lawsuits. They can't do that. Not falsely. Now, if they intend to file charges or put it through a lawsuit, then they can. But if they are not intending to do that, they can't just say that. Okay, you have a right to verify your debt. So if you get notified by a collector or a lender saying, hey, you need to pay us back this money you owe, as long as it's within 30 days of their initial contact, you can dispute it. They must provide written proof if you request it. They must stop all ways of trying to collect the debt until the verification is provided to you. And that's the thing they have to do. Now, if it's beyond 30 days, like if you're sitting, I'm sure you're sitting there going, hey, I've got some debt that's beyond 30 days. That's okay. It's not the situation here is you can still ask for verification. They're not legally required to provide it, but most reputable debt collectors will send you a confirmation that you do owe the debt. So those are just some of those protections. Privacy, they cannot discuss your debt with other people. So if you have a situation where they're calling around to your friends and family, they can't do that. They can discuss your debt with you or your spouse or your attorney. That's it. They can contact others just to locate you, but they cannot reveal details about your debt. Now, if these things do happen, if the wrong things happen, if people are mistreating you in these ways that we just talked about, then you have some ways that you can try to do something about it. So you can file a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, the CFPB is one of those organizations that's been dismantled, and the folks have all been let go except for a handful of people. But I went out to their website yesterday just to see, and they do still have the file a complaint button. Now, I don't know how fast you will hear back. I used to send clients to them all the time that had issues, and they were very responsive and helpful. I don't know what that's going to look like now, but it's still available to you to file a complaint. So it's something you can at least give it a try. You can also sue them, and you can file a complaint with your state's attorney general, because that's always an avenue for you, right? I've done that with clients before. I've contacted, I live in Ohio, but I've contacted our attorney general's office and filed complaints against nefarious debt collectors for clients. So those are just some avenues that you can go through. Now, I did, just because I know you all are in Massachusetts, I did look at your situation, and your state also has a Bill of Rights around debt collection. A lot of the things were very similar, but some of the things that your state has is they cannot call you more than twice in a 7-day period. They can, some of them are the same, but like there is a statute of limitations on debt. One of the other things to know, and I think I might even have this on my next slide a little bit, but like if you have a debt that you owe, credit card, loans, whatever, it will expire after 6 years from the last time you made a payment or what they call an acknowledgement. So like if let's say you're at 5.5 years and you've not paid anything on a debt, you've not contacted them in any way, and then you call them just to find out what you owe, you've now restarted the 6-year clock, just so you know. So that's just something I want to mention to folks is, that, and this isn't just a Massachusetts thing, the 6 years, that's universal under this Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. If you have a judgment debt, like a creditor that sues and wins, that can still be collected for up to 20 years. But any old debts cannot be legally enforced in court. Now, that doesn't mean they'll stop calling you or trying to collect. They still can try, but they can't sue you in court. So just so you know how that works and what those time limits mean. In Massachusetts, they cannot garnish more than 15% of your wages on most debts. And then some income sources like Social Security and pensions are protected. So you can also call, like I said, Massachusetts, it's hard to say that word. You guys have to say that all the time. I just say Ohio. Massachusetts Attorney General's Office, CFP Board, or the Federal Trade Commission. Those are all things that you have in your quiver to be able to use to go after these folks if they're doing the wrong thing. Okay, so here's just a couple other things that I want to mention as you're working through some types of debt management. Verify what you owe. Like I said, most reputable debt collectors, if you call them and say, hey, I want to see proof that I owe this, they will show that to you. They should show that to you and give you the relevant details. And I would say if you are within the 30 days, do not pay anything until you have that verification that you owe the debt. Okay. So that's one thing. If you are inside of that 30-day window, just make sure that you ask for the verification that you owe and you wait for it. Don't make any payments until you get that. The other thing, and I tell folks this all the time, keep really good records of all calls, emails, letters, if anyone does letters anymore, like correspondence, anything like that. Keep a notebook, write down the date and time, who you spoke with, and then summarize the conversation of what you heard and what they said they would do. If you get an email, print it off, put it in a file. I actually keep a book, and it's for any correspondence. It doesn't matter what it is. Like I've been calling my son just ruptured his Achilles, and so he's been in doctors and PT. I record everything. What did they tell me they were going to do? What did my insurance say they were going to pay? Who did I talk to? Date, time, everything. I keep track of everything. I may sound like a nut job to you guys. I don't know, but I think it's a good practice just to keep a notebook and keep records of all these kind of correspondence. I don't think you'll regret it. I'll tell you that. I have had to pull that out before when I've called somebody and I'll say, well, I talked to you on, March 17th at 8:05 and I spoke with Adrian, right? So, then, suddenly they're sort of like, oh, did this person record this conversation? Right? They're a little more on edge, I think. Keep communications in writing as much as possible. I mean, it's great to document a phone, call, but I think if you can get it in a chat or a text or email, even better, right? And then, other things you can do is negotiate a settlement. If the debt's valid, you can try to negotiate a settlement to get a lower price, a lower interest rate, lower anything. Because I used to many years ago. I not many years ago, but I worked at Nationwide Insurance, and during that time, I ended up getting, because I worked in finance, they had this debt collection group that they didn't really know where to put, so they asked me to take them on, and I did. And it was a weird debt collection because it was agents of Nationwide that we were collecting debts against, like they had borrowed money and they owed money back, or they had gotten a commission payment and then the policy lapsed, so they have to repay their commissions, things like that. Anyway, what I learned through this process, because I ended up doing a lot of research on debt collection, is they generally don't get their money back, especially when debts have gone on for a long period of time. So if somebody had called me and said, one of these agents had called me and said, hey, Chris, I want to pay this off. Can I pay like 20% of it and just give it to you today? And I would have generally taken it, because the average debt I was not able to collect. So if somebody called and wanted to give us something for it, I would take it. So that's just one perspective. Like I said, that was just from my time at Nationwide. But anyway, so just something to think about. Okay. Now I wanted to talk really quick about credit, only because you will hear this again when they do the credit workshop, but debt and credit kind of go hand in hand in many ways. And so if you haven't heard this before, I like to show this chart. what makes up your credit score, right? So this is like a quick summary. 35% of your credit score is just pay your bills on time. And as long as you're paying your bills on time, you're going to keep your credit score high. Another one, and these are the two biggest. So if you remember only a portion of this, these are the two biggest. Pay your bills on time and keep your utilization rate low. And the utilization rate is just what do you owe, meaning how much have you charged, divided by how much credit limit do you have. So if you have a credit card with a $100 credit limit and you've spent $30, you have a 30% credit utilization rate. The credit score creators want to see that below 30%. So try to get your credit utilization below 30%, and your credit score will go up. And then smaller ones is just how long have you had your credit? You get bonuses for having it a long time. If you open new credit, you get dinged. And then they do like to see different types of credit. So you actually get a bump if you have a car loan and a mortgage and a credit card, something like that. So I blew through that real quick. I just wanted to kind of reset everyone on what makes up your credit score. So strategies to pay off debt. You probably have heard these before, but I'll run through them. Paying one debt at a time. First of all, you have to keep up the minimums on all cards. So let's say you have 5 cards, right? 5 credit cards. I'm just going to make it simple and use credit cards. Okay, so if you use what they call the snowball method, you're going to pay off the lowest balance first, then the next lowest, then the next lowest until they're all gone, right? Or what you could do is you could pay the highest interest first and pay till that one's done, and then pay the next highest interest, pay till that's done. Now, obviously keeping up minimums on all of them, but this is for the extra money. Where do you put the extra money? So for snowball, you put it on the smallest and work your way up. For highest interest first, you start with the highest interest and keep just paying the next highest. Now, the reason, and you might think, well, why would I even want to do this snowball thing? Because I'm going to want to get rid of this interest as fast as possible. And I would say yes, but you, right? Everybody is different. And if you know that you're more likely to stick with this debt reduction plan, if you can see wins along the way, like, oh, I had 5 when I started and now I'm down to 3 because I paid those smaller ones off first and I got rid of them, then do it. Whatever keeps you going, whatever makes it work for you, do that. So I'm not saying everything doesn't have to be perfect financially. It doesn't have to all be the perfect financial decision. Just keep moving in the right direction. Paying more than a minimum, that's kind of obvious. That takes time, right? Consolidating debts. You can transfer balances, and we see a lot of this with clients with Savvy Ladies. They keep transferring balance over to zero interest cards or low interest cards. You're paying a fee every time you do that. So the bank is only giving you a zero interest card because they're going to charge you up front to let you do the balance transfer. This is a balance transfer fee. So they're going to give you some amount of time where you can be at zero interest. It does help you. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I'm just saying they do get their money out of you. So it's not like a no cost to you prospect, and it adds to your balance of what you owe that you're going to have to pay for this. Another idea with consolidating debt is you can tap into a home equity loan. And if you have equity in your home, you can take out a loan at a lower interest rate than certainly a credit card, and then pay off your debt, and then you'll end up paying off the home equity loan just like your mortgage. It's just a second mortgage. But keep in mind that could come with closing costs, that sort of thing. So there's costs associated with any of these debt consolidation ideas. You can look into taking a loan from your 401k, but I would say this is a dangerous option because it takes your money out of the market. So during the time that you are repaying yourself back to the 401k, your money's not in the market working for you towards your retirement. Now you may say, well, hey, that's still the better option, and occasionally that still is. I have had clients come to Savvy Ladies, and when we walk through all the options of what they have, doing the 401k loan is actually the best option. Now, it's not often that works out, but it occasionally does. Just something to think about in terms of what you can do. Review your spending. I mean, I know that sounds really obvious. It's not as easy as it sounds, but Savvy Ladies volunteers, we're here. We do this every day. We can certainly help you look through your budget, scrub for ideas, right? And find ways to try to reduce spending. You can move to a cash payment system. This is a very common technique, and if you go to a credit counselor, many times this is one of the options that they will mention to you. It can also be called the envelope method. So you have an envelope for each of the different things that you spend money on in a month. You have money for gas and money for food and money for dining out. It's only around really discretionary items. You're not going to put your mortgage in there because that's not you have to pay that, and you know what that is, and it's very consistent. But if you have something that's discretionary, like let's call it groceries or dining out, when you leave the last money that leaves that envelope, if you still have 10 days to the end of the month, you're done eating out, right? If you have a Starbucks envelope, you're done going to Starbucks until the next month when you can refill the envelope. So those are ways to kind of create discipline for yourself and to help you really feel the pain, right? Because like we said, cash equals pain. If you have to pay that cash out, you see it, you feel it, it's more tangible and real. And then use windfalls, right? Raises, bonuses, tax refunds, any kind of financial windfall is not to be thought of as something special to go to Disney with. Really, it's meant to be pay off this debt, get into a more healthy financial situation. That actually is your paycheck. You just gave it to them in an interest-free loan, and now they're giving it back to you. So it needs to go towards living expenses. Okay, and then once the debt's paid off, you're going to want to start expanding on building up an emergency savings or increasing retirement savings. You know, once you get debt free, it's like the world's your oyster, right? You can start putting money in all kinds of places that are going to be more helpful to your long-term goals. Okay, I would say now before considering debt consolidation, you're going to want to make sure that you're looking at any type of debt consolidation. Get the support first from a nonprofit credit counselor. And I'm giving you like one right there. Financial Counseling Association of America is a really good organization. It's a nonprofit. They try and help folks with debt consolidation or, budgeting, whatever you need. The best one is get to the bottom of why you're in debt. Go back to those financial or psychological behavioral pitfalls we were talking about. What is it that's causing you to continuously see that debt expanding, right? Like, which of those different behaviors is the one that you're like, that was the one. As soon as she said it, I knew that was me. That's what my downfall is. We all have them. I'm not sitting here saying things that, I don't have I finances, good. Eating right, bad. Going and exercising, bad. So we all have things. My thing isn't money, but your thing probably isn't eating the wrong food. I mean, who knows? We're all different and we all have things. None of us can throw bricks because we're all living in glass houses, right? I mean, that's just a true statement. But get to the bottom of what it is that's causing your barrier to getting yourself out of debt and getting on a good financial path. Making a budget and looking for ways to reduce spending. We talked about that. And then try to lower payments by talking with creditors. A lot of times that doesn't work unless you're already in collections. But you can always try. You can always ask. There's nothing ever wrong with asking, and you never know what might come of it. So it's good just to see. Okay, so we're circling back now to the beginning. What are some of the things that you can do to avoid these psychological debt traps? Every time I said that, I was saying death trap, but it's debt trap, okay? So let's go back to present bias, right? So present bias was that you think about things as an instant gratification, right? There's some new research that's been going on in the financial world around visualization, and what it is you have to be kind of serious about it. It sounds funny, but you're visualizing yourself someday in the future when you're ready to retire or you're in retirement or whatever that is that you envision is going to happen to you when you're older, right? And you think about that person that's at that time. So I always look and I think, okay, Chris, there's 70-year-old Chris, right? And 70-year-old Chris wants to be doing the things she wants to do, right? Which is probably a lot of this, because I actually love this, if you can't tell. I love meeting with people and talking about finances, but I want to keep doing that, right? So if 70-year-old Chris wants to be doing that, then 70-year-old Chris better make sure she's taking care of business today, that I have enough money to live on, so I don't have to just count on Social Security being there or count on my pensions or whatever it is, right? So you got to do that visualization of yourself. I had a client, Savvy Lady's client, and she was a youngster, right? Like really young. I think she was 21, and she'd come to me and she's like, I have this debt and I want to start saving money and I want to invest and I want to do these things. Okay, so we went through a budget, we put together a budget, and one of the items on her budget was she was paying a monthly service for tanning. And it was $160 a month. And it was so she was a model, but it was so she could tan. And I said to her, I said, think about yourself at 65, looking back at 21-year-old you and saying, you were spending $160 to tan. And I ran some numbers for her. And I said, if you put that $160 in an investment, right? Let's put it in an IRA every month instead of paying it to the tanning place every month. At 65, she was going to have buku money. I told her how much it was going to be if you make assumptions about what the market will do and has done. And she couldn't believe it. She's like, I can't believe it would grow to that much money. And I said, it would. And so I said, what do you think 65-year-old you is going to think looking back and knowing they could now at 65 have that much money? But you were spending it, on tanning. And oh, by the way, 65-year-old you might even have skin cancer now, right? So these are things to think about. That visualization tactic is really powerful. That's how you can help with the present bias, writing down financial goals. Use commitment devices like autopay, right? Those kind of things help with that idea that I want to spend in the moment. Optimism bias, that was the one where we talked about where it always seems like tomorrow's going to have more money, right? I'm going to have more money tomorrow. So that one, a good one is assume you won't get those financial benefits, right? Kind of be a Debbie Downer, oh, well, maybe it won't happen, and then what? What would I do? So that it maybe sounds Debbie Downer, it maybe sounds like you're not visualizing your better self, but you're going to be ready when the time comes if it happens that you don't have the money in the future. One of the stats, I'll give you a stat that has nothing to do with debt exactly, but I tell young folks this all the time. You are 4 times more likely to become disabled as a young person before 65 than you are to die. And everybody worries about life insurance, right? Everybody's worried about life insurance, but nobody's thinking about disability. And these things can really happen. You can become disabled. You can not be able to get another high-paying job when you get in your 50s. I mean, I bet if I were to pull up some of our over 50-year-old folks that are on this call, they would tell you it gets harder sometimes to be finding the next job, a higher paying job when you get older. Another good thing when you're thinking about the future is establish that emergency fund. Make sure when something goes wrong with the car or the house or the kid blows out Achilles, that you've got that emergency fund that you can pay these unexpected bills, right? Okay, the pain of paying, that's the one where credit cards are just too easy. It doesn't feel like actual financial money going out the door. Switch to the cash method. We just talked about that. Use a cooling off period. That one works for me really well. I'll go in somewhere and I'll think, oh, I'd really like that. And then I'm like, because I'm super frugal, I'm good at this. I'm going to wait and see if I really want it. Every now and then I might still think about it and go back, but almost never do I go back and get it because I moved on to the next thing. And I've been teaching that one to my son, and he's been doing the same thing. He's 16, but he's been doing the same thing. He waits before he buys some video game, and then later he's like, yeah, Mom, I'm glad I waited because now I don't want it. The anchoring effect, that's that one with reference points. Remember we were talking about like a realtor shows you a more expensive house than a less expensive house. What are some things there? Well, set your predetermined spending limit and stick to it. So if you say, I'm not going to spend more than this on a house, don't do it, right? And I know that's easier said than done, but you got to really think through like your long-term financial goals and what is it you're trying to accomplish and make sure you stick with these things. Recognize those marketing tactics. I hope that now that we've talked about this, I hope you guys see it all the time. Because I know when I first heard about these things, I see it all the time now. Like, oh, I know what they're doing. I know they're trying to trick me, right? Social comparison bias. Set personal financial goals. Don't worry about what someone else is doing. Set your own personal financial goals, right? And this is one I definitely talk to my son about all the time because he'll say, so-and-so's parents just bought whatever car or whatever, and because he hates the fact that my car is 12 years old. but I'm driving that car until it dies or runs off, road, whatever. I'm driving that car forever. It's a really nice car. It's a Honda CRV and it drives perfect. I almost never have to do anything to it. But he hates that car because it's old and his friends' parents drive these whatever cars, I don't know, but like I'm just like, I don't want to hear about it. I got my own goals that I'm trying to achieve. They're on their own trajectory. So I don't worry about them. Find low cost alternatives. This is a good one for, let's say you're going out with friends, right? And that you're used to going out to eat all the time, right? You could say, hey guys, why don't we just, the thing we enjoy doing the most is just talking and having fun. It doesn't matter where we go. Why don't we go to each other's house and cook dinner or go somewhere less expensive, right, to eat? So those are good things to kind of combat social comparison bias. Now, this hyperbolic discounting, that was the one where you delay tackling hard financial things, right? This one, set up auto payments, right? Get those auto payments going at a time when you're really thinking that you want to accomplish your financial goals, and then do it. Set up those automatic payments, not at a weak time, but at a time when you feel most powerful and most strong about your convictions for what you want to achieve. You can also trick yourself. Like I've done this before. Like I'll say, if I can make it to that, lamppost, then I'm gonna walk here, right? And so it's like these if-then rules. So you say, well, if I get a raise, then I'm going to increase payment on my debt another 20%, right? And now this one's good because I always say, if you get a raise, like let's assume you've got your debt tackled, increase how much is going into that 401k or 403b or IRA or whatever, right? So those are all good if-thens. If I get this, then I'm going to do this and then stick to it. Loss aversion. So we talked about loss aversion. People don't want to lose money. People don't want to lose their cash flow. What can you do? Shift your mindset from that minimum payment mentality, right? So right now, I know there's folks out there that are like, well, I'm just making the minimum payments and I'm just trying to keep up. And eventually that is just going to keep growing. That debt will keep growing and it'll be unmanageable. And you're sticking your head in the sand if you just keep making the minimum payments. So you got to shift that mindset. Use one of those debt methods to try and really work on clearing out the debt and reframe the debt as a guaranteed investment, like a guaranteed return on your investment. So if you pay off a debt that you were paying 20%, interest on, now it's like making 20% more, right? Because you're not spending it. It's not going out the door any longer. It's done, over. Now extra money is going to go into making 20%, not spending 20%. So you got to shift that reframing of paying off the debt as like, hey, this is like, I am really making headway and I'm going to have a lot of money at the end of this. The default and automatic effects, just opt out of high interest financial offers, review your debt regularly. And there's actually a place, it's called optoutprescreen.com, optoutprescreen.com. And you can actually send an email or a letter or whatever you want to do to them. And these credit card offers stop coming to your house. They will stop. I did it years ago and I haven't gotten a credit card offer since. I used to get tons of them. It was ridiculous. Mental accounting. This is the one where when you think about things in buckets, right? So it's like, well, if I'm getting a tax refund, I'm thinking about it differently than the money I used to pay bills. Or if I get a bonus, right? Now that's just extra money. No, it's your salary, like, right? It's what you need to pay your living expenses and your debt and whatever. So avoid spending windfalls. I'll call it on frivolous things. It's, you know what I mean? Not on debt. View credit card limits as debt traps, right? So if you're like, wow, I've got $1,000 limit, then that's how much I get to spend. No, because you're going to spend 120% on that, right? And then track all your expenses in one place. So Savvy Ladies, we are here. I'm going to see if Tracy, she's on the call as well, wants to say a few words about Savvy Ladies and what we do and what we have to offer. I know she likes to have a chance to talk about that.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you everybody for joining us. And Chris is one of our amazing volunteers. And I did put in the chat, and I hope that you were able to see it. But if you would like to be connected with one of our volunteer pro bono. So we have our free financial helpline for women. If you would like to be connected with somebody to answer your personal question, just head to our webpage, which is savvyladies.org. And you can click on Get Help and go to our free financial helpline. We just ask some very, very basic information from you so that our volunteers can get some information to help you out, and then you'll be contacted by a volunteer. So yeah, so if you are interested in that, that is a free service we offer. Also, we have free financial classes online as well. So you can take a look at those along with blogs. We have with our blog, and we have recorded videos as well. So hope that you take advantage of that. And again, thank you for being here. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Yeah, so we're open to questions if anyone has any, not necessary, but if you had a burning question as I was talking, I'm happy to answer any that you have.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question about, like, is there a budgeting tool that you recommend or the best way to do it? Because I find it overwhelming and it's hard. And so I'm just wondering if you have any sort of tips for that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. We actually do have a budgeting tool that we have through Savvy Ladies. So you can actually go out to the website and there is a template that we use for that. Or you are certainly welcome to put a request in with the helpline, and a volunteer like myself can actually just help you walk through it. I always do, when I get folks that are looking for help putting together a budget, I always like to do what I always call the quick and dirty budget. And because I think sometimes a barrier to getting started is just this thinking, oh, I've got to go track 3 months of expenses, or I've got to go look everything up. And what I try and do is, while we're on the call, we're going to put it together and it's going to be close enough. Let's call it, right? Close enough. And we're going to go by your memory or something you might want to look up. And we're going to get pretty close to your final budget. And then we're going to talk about some strategies for you to start building up emergency savings, starting to invest, starting to pay off debt, whatever the thing is, right, that you are wanting to accomplish with your goals. We're going to start with the budget. We're going to make it simple, and we're going to just start working on the next steps, because spending too much time just like working on the budget is just going to make someone give up. And so we just got to think about how to make it happen close enough, quickly, so that we can move to the next stage, which is like really meeting your goals. That's the important part.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Anybody, any other questions?
Sorry, Chris. I just put in the chat, a link to our budget worksheet as well as a link to our budgeting calculator.
Thank you, Tracy. Okay, well, I hope you guys found this very helpful. Like I'd hoped I'd covered things pretty well. Maybe I did. That's good. Hopefully I didn't just confuse everybody and you're like, this was a waste. Hopefully not. But no, so like we said at the beginning, if you do have questions, just submit a request into the helpline. You will be assigned to a volunteer who can help you. The more details you can kind of help us with in terms of what you're looking for, to solve, like the problem to solve, is always really helpful. Sometimes somebody will just put like financial abuse, and we're like, okay, I don't, because some volunteers actually specialize in different things. We have certain volunteers that specialize maybe in some divorce type questions, or somebody in tax, or somebody in, debt management. So occasionally, like, some of our volunteers can be more specialists. And so if the question doesn't come in looking like something they feel like they're is equipped to handle, then they don't take the client's question, and it might sit there a little longer than it should, because we don't entirely know what they're looking for help in. And so everybody's sort of like, well, I'm not sure if that's going to be something I can help them with. Anyway. And I wanted to say something else about the helpline. If you put in a request at the helpline, make sure you go back and verify your email, because we see a lot of requests that people, we can see them, they come in, they never verify. And so we're not sure if that's somebody that does want to connect with us or not. And then the other thing I'll say is, another thing that I think happens is I will pick up a request from a client and I will say, hey, I'm here. When can you meet? I'd love to meet with you. And I never hear from them. And I think spam foldering must be what's going on, is the emails are going. Tracy and I've talked about this to death, trying to figure out how to fix this, because someone goes to all the trouble to put in a question. I will respond and say, hey, glad to help you. How can we meet? Never hear from them again. And I can't. We even tried one day texting people, Tracy and I, nobody answered. So I don't know what's going on, but please, just know, check your spam folder if you put in a request. Those are just some things. As we've been having some of these webinars, I've been trying to tell folks, I just hate the thought that someone went out there, put a question in, needs help, and they don't know why they're not hearing from us. And I think it's a spam folder issue. Okay. Kirsten, did you want to wrap us up?
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. That was wonderful. So if anybody has any questions, you can also contact us at the business library for any kind of job, business, financial literacy questions, and we can also connect you to other resources. You can email us at kblic, that's KLBIC, at bpl.org, and it'll be directed to us. Yep, and I can send a follow-up email too with all these resources. Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it was great to talk with everyone. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.